December 11th, 2044, 1847 hours. Houston Ship Channel, 3 miles east of the Port of Houston. Smoke doesn't rise the way you'd expect. It rolls, thick and black and greasy, pouring from ruptured storage tanks at the Valero Refinery. The kind of smoke that blots out the afternoon sun, that turns day into twilight, that makes breathing feel like drowning. Captain Cole Harris. 27 days since Seattle sank with the Chancellorsville. They didn't give me another ship. They gave me something worse. They gave me Houston after the missiles hit. The attack came at dawn. 73 cruise missiles launched from Russian submarines operating in the Gulf. Coordinated strike. No warning. No time for optimal defense posture. Just alarms and launches and the brutal mathematics of surprise. Shore defenses stopped 41. Patriot batteries, THAAD systems, the ground-based interceptors that were supposed to protect 7 million people. 32 got through. 32 missiles carrying 1,000 pounds of high explosive each. 32 impacts distributed across refinery complexes, petrochemical facilities, the ship channel infrastructure. 32 detonations that turned Houston's industrial heartland into hell. 3,200 casualties. So far, numbers climbing. Still pulling bodies from collapsed structures. Still finding people trapped in the wreckage. Still discovering what happens when modern weapons hit industrial targets full of volatile chemicals. Still learning that acceptable losses aren't acceptable when you're standing in them. I'm not commanding from a bridge anymore. I'm standing on the deck of a Coast Guard cutter watching Houston burn. Task Force commander now, not a ship captain. Admiral 10 pulled me from naval operations and dropped me into crisis response. Said I understand the mathematics better than anyone. Said I know what modern warfare costs. Said Houston needs someone who's already learned to carry weight. The cutter, USC Gimes, pushes through water turned gray with ash. The ship channel's a disaster, burning oil slicks, capsized vessels, debris fields where port facilities used to stand. The economic catastrophe that Chicago and Seattle previewed, that Houston finally delivered. Commander Laura Vance stands beside me, Coast Guard, 42. Houston native, been working this channel for 18 years. Watched it burn this morning while her city learned what insufficient defense means. Captain Harris, rescue teams report another storage tank is critical. Baytown Complex, Tank 7 Alpha. Internal pressure rising. If it goes, the blast wave will level everything within half a mile. There's a residential area. Families sheltering. We need to evacuate, but the roads are blocked. Another tank ready to explode. Another crisis layering on top of 32 missile impacts. The cascading failures that define attacks on industrial targets. The secondary catastrophes that keep killing long after the missiles stop. How long do we have? Engineers estimate 90 minutes. Maybe less. Tank's been burning for 11 hours. Metal's compromised. Could fail any time. 90 minutes to evacuate a residential area when roads are blocked by debris, when emergency services are overwhelmed, when every available resource is already committed to 3,000 casualties and counting. 90 minutes to prevent the mathematics from being worse. What's the residential population? Vance checks her tablet, pulls census data overlaid with damage assessments, building the picture from fragments. Approximately 800 people, mostly families, low-income housing. They stayed because they couldn't afford to evacuate when the warnings came. 800 people. The population that gets left behind, but lacks resources for escape, that shelters in place and hopes probability favors them, that learns too late that modern warfare doesn't care about economics or fairness or who can afford safety, that becomes casualties because poverty trapped them in blast radius. We're evacuating them by water. It's the only route left. Captain, we don't have enough boats. Coast Guard assets are committed to ship channel rescue operations. Fire department boats are fighting the refinery fires. Navy has nothing in position. We'd need to pull resources from active rescue operations to evacuate those 800. Pull resources from active rescue to prevent future casualties. The impossible choice. Save the people drowning now, or save the people who'll die when the tank explodes.
Triage written in votes, in time, and mathematics that don't balance. Command means choosing, always choosing, who lives now versus who lives later. Certain casualties versus potential casualties. The calculus that has no right answer, only less wrong options. How many people are in active rescue operations right now? Estimated 200 trapped in various locations throughout the impact zone. Oil rig workers, ship crews, refinery personnel. People we know are alive and waiting for extraction. 200 certain casualties if we abandon them. 800 potential casualties if we don't evacuate before the tank explodes. Maybe the tank doesn't fail. Maybe engineers are wrong. Maybe 90 minutes is conservative. Maybe 800 people don't need saving. Or maybe they all die because we chose certainty over probability. We do both. Coordinate with fire department. Any boat that can float gets pulled for evacuation duty. We've got 90 minutes. That's enough time to move 800 people if we're efficient. Sir, that means leaving some of the 200 without immediate rescue. Response times will increase. Some people who might survive will die waiting. Some people will die waiting. The mathematics made explicit. The cost stated clearly. The trade made visible. 200 versus 800. Certain versus probable. Now versus soon. The calculation that defines this war, that makes strategic victory possible by accepting partial catastrophe, that measures success in degrees of terrible, that makes me choose which families grieve. I understand. Execute the evacuation. We save who we can and accept that we can't save everyone. Vance acknowledges, passes orders, professional, understanding that someone has to make the choice even when the choice guarantees casualties. That command means carrying the weight of people you couldn't save. That some die so others don't, and mathematics determine which. The James continues through the ship channel, past burning refineries, past capsized vessels, past the industrial wreckage that used to process 2.8 billion barrels of oil daily, past the economic machinery that Russia wanted destroyed, that 32 missiles accomplished in minutes. My phone vibrates, calling from Dallas, where she evacuated yesterday, where she watched news coverage of Houston burning, where she learned her father's in the disaster zone making impossible choices. I answer, Dad? God, Dad, are you okay? The news is showing the ship channel. It looks like the end of the world. Emma's voice breaks. She's crying. The daughter who survived Seattle watching Houston burn, who's learning that the war doesn't stop, that attacks keep coming, that her father keeps deploying into catastrophe, that resistance costs everything and never ends. I'm okay. I'm on a Coast Guard cutter. We're doing rescue operations. It's bad. Worse than Seattle. 3,000 dead already and the numbers climbing. They're saying the defenses failed, that the missiles came from submarines, that there wasn't enough warning. Is that true? Is it true? Yes. The attack came at dawn, with minimal warning, submarines operating close to the coast, detection delayed, intercept timeline compressed, the surprise attack that reduces response capability, that degrades defense through timing rather than volume, that works because it exploits the gap between detection and engagement. It's true. We stopped 41 out of 73. 56% interception rate, same as Seattle, but 32 got through, and they hit refineries, chemical plants, industrial targets full of volatile materials. The secondary explosions are still happening. The fires are still burning. Houston's going to be dealing with this for weeks. 3,000 people, Dad. 3,000 families just learned what we learned, what I learned when Danny died. How do you keep doing this? How do you keep fighting when it costs so much? How do I keep fighting? Because stopping means surrender.
because the alternative is worse, because someone has to stand in the gap even when standing can't prevent catastrophe, because duty matters even when duty fails to save everyone, because Emma's alive, and that makes carrying the weight possible, because 32 missiles is better than 73, because 3,000 casualties is better than 10,000, because partial success is still success, even when it feels like failure, because resistance matters, Em, even when it's insufficient. Silence on the line. Emma processing, understanding maybe that her father measures victory in degrees of catastrophe, that success means most survive while some don't, that strategic victory costs thousands but saves thousands more, that the mathematics never balance personally, even when they balance strategically. I love you, Dad. Please don't die in Houston. Please come home. I love you too. I'll do my best. I end the call. Can't promise survival when 800 people need evacuating and 200 need rescuing and storage tanks are exploding and Houston's burning. Can't guarantee coming home when the mission demands risking everything. Can only fight, can only resist, can only make impossible choices and hope they matter. The James reaches the Baytown residential area. Low-income housing along the channel. Families sheltering while smoke rolls overhead. While the threatened storage tank burns half a mile away. While engineers calculate failure timelines and hope their math is conservative. While I calculate that 800 people alive is better than 800 dead, even if it costs some of the 200 waiting for rescue. Calculate that duty requires choosing, even when choosing means accepting casualties. Calculate that resistance matters, even when it fails to save everyone. Boats converge. Coast Guard cutters, fire department vessels, civilian craft pulled into emergency service. The maritime evacuation beginning, loading families. Children crying, parents carrying what they can, 800 people learning they're in blast radius, that the tank might fail, that they're being saved because someone calculated their deaths were probable, that they're alive because mathematics favored them over the 200 still waiting. Vance coordinates the operation, assigning boats, managing flow, professional efficiency extracting population from danger, the organized chaos of crisis response, the system working despite being overwhelmed, the resistance that matters even when it's insufficient. Captain, first boat is loaded, 60 people heading to safe zone. Estimated round trip time is 18 minutes. We'll need, sir, at this rate we'll barely make it. 90 minutes to move 800 people is tight. Barely make it means some might not evacuate in time, means the last boats might be loading when the tank explodes, means the mathematics might not work out perfectly, means choosing this evacuation might cost lives anyway, but doing nothing guarantees 800 casualties. Fighting gives them a chance. Resistance matters even when outcomes are uncertain. That's what's left. That's what remains. Hope measured in probability, success measured in degrees. Victory defined by who survives rather than who doesn't die. The boats keep loading, families evacuating. The count declining, 800 becomes 700, becomes 600. Progress measured in people saved. In mathematics, tilting towards survival. In resistance that might matter enough. Through the smoke, Houston burns. Refineries blazing. The industrial heartland destroyed, 3,000 casualties and counting. The economic catastrophe that Russia wanted, the strategic victory they achieved. But 7 million people survived. Refineries can rebuild. Infrastructure can replace. The city stands even while parts burn. Houston learned what Chicago and Seattle learned, that defense is insufficient, that some missiles get through, that acceptable losses mean thousands dead. But Houston also learned resistance matters, that 56% interception saved 4,000 lives, that fighting reduces catastrophe, even when it can't prevent it, that strategic victory costs thousands but saves thousands more. The evacuation continues. The boats working, the families leaving, the mathematics improving incrementally. The resistance that matters even when it fails to save everyone.
68 minutes remaining. The evacuation's running behind schedule. First boat took 22 minutes for the round trip instead of 18. Traffic on the waterway. Debris slowing passage. The friction that reality adds to perfect plans. 800 people. Boats carrying 50 to 70 each, depending on size. 12 trips minimum. 20 minutes per cycle. 240 minutes of operational time compressed into 90 minutes of available time. The mathematics that don't work. Captain, we're not going to make it at this rate. Vance watches boats loading families, watching the count drop slower than the clock. We need more vessels, or we need to accept partial evacuation. Partial evacuation. The phrase that means choosing who stays. Who remains in blast radius when the tank fails? Who dies because boats ran out? Or time expired? Or mathematics favored some families over others? The choice I'm already making, with the 200 still waiting for rescue, now applied to the 800 I'm trying to save. The calculation that never stops, that keeps demanding sacrifice, that makes command mean choosing casualties. How many can we definitely evacuate in 68 minutes? Vance runs the numbers, calculates boat capacity times trips times available time, builds the picture from brutal arithmetic. Best case, 550 people. That leaves 250 in the blast zone when time expires. 550 saved, 250 dead. The mathematics of insufficient resources, of crisis response stretched beyond capacity, of modern warfare creating more casualties than systems can handle, of resistance that matters but can't save everyone. What if we expand the safe zone? Reduce the evacuation distance. Shorter trips mean more cycles. Sir, the blast radius is half a mile. Engineers were clear. Tank Alpha 7 fails, everything within that radius is gone. We can't reduce the evacuation distance without leaving people in lethal range.
Can't reduce distance without guaranteeing casualties. Can't increase speed without risking boat accidents. Can't add resources that don't exist. Can't make mathematics balance when reality says they won't. Can only choose. 250 die, or we pull boats from the 200 waiting for rescue and kill them instead. Transfer casualties from one group to another. Make the mathematics zero-sum. Make duty mean deciding which families grieve. The sound cuts through the chaos, low and rumbling. Not an explosion, deeper. The groan of stressed metal, of structural failure beginning, of physics declaring that tanks can't burn forever without consequences. Everyone freezes. Families mid-boarding, Coast Guard crews, fire department personnel. Everyone listening to the sound that means time's expiring. That means the tank is failing ahead of schedule. That means 68 minutes was optimistic. Captain, that's the tank. That's the sound engineers warned about. Metal buckling. Internal pressure overwhelming containment. Sir, We might have minutes instead of an hour. Minutes instead of an hour? The timeline collapsing. The mathematics getting worse. 800 becomes whatever we can load right now. Whatever boats are available immediately. Whatever families are closest to evacuation points. Becomes random. Becomes arbitrary. Becomes whoever probability favors in the next 5 minutes instead of whoever we chose to save. All boats, emergency acceleration. Load maximum capacity immediately. Forget safety margins, forget procedure, get people aboard and get them clear. Move now. The evacuation dissolves into controlled panic. Families running toward boats. Crews pulling people aboard without counting. Overloading vessels past rated capacity. Trading safety for speed. Risking capsizing to prevent certain death. Making the choice that maybe everyone drowns, but definitely everyone dies if the tank explodes. The James moves closer, taking on families directly. Vance directing traffic. People climbing over railings. Children passed hand to hand. Elderly carried. The desperate extraction of population from an imminent catastrophe. The resistance that matters when time collapses to minutes. My phone vibrates. Not Emma this time. Admiral Chen. I answer while families board around me. Harris. Situation report. Admiral. Houston ship channel is critical. Tank 7 Alpha is failing ahead of schedule. We're evacuating 800 civilians, but we're not going to get them all. Some are going to die when it blows. Chen is quiet. Processing. Calculating. Understanding that some situations have no good options. That command sometimes means accepting outcomes you can't prevent. That strategic success sometimes includes tactical failures. How many can you save? Unknown. We're loading everyone we can reach. Maybe 600, maybe 400. Depends on how long the tank holds.
What about the 200 in active rescue operations? The 200 I'm not rescuing because boats are here, because I chose potential casualties over certain ones, because 800 mattered more than 200, and now maybe neither group survives completely. They're still waiting. I pulled resources for the evacuation. Some of them won't make it. Another pause. Longer this time. Chen calculating. Understanding that pulling boats from active rescue to evacuate civilians means sailors die. Means the choice created casualties that wouldn't have existed otherwise. Means strategic decision cost lives. You made the call you had to make. 800 versus 200. The mathematics support your choice even if outcomes don't. The mathematics support your choice. The phrase that means duty justified the decision even when results prove insufficient. That means intention matters more than outcome. That means trying and failing is better than not trying. That means I did everything right and people die anyway. Yes, sir. Chen's voice changes. Personal instead of professional. The Admiral speaking instead of the command structure. You can't save everyone. You know that. Seattle taught that. Houston's teaching it again. You make the best choice available and you carry what follows. That's all there is. That's all there is. The summary of command. The definition of duty. The reality that no decision saves everyone. That resistance reduces casualties but can't eliminate them. That fighting matters even when it fails to prevent catastrophe. That carrying weight is permanent. Understood, Admiral. Keep me updated, Chen sends. The call ends. I'm back to watching families board. Back to counting heads. Back to calculating that maybe 600 get clear and 200 don't, and the 200 waiting for rescue die waiting, and the mathematics say I chose correctly but feel wrong anyway. Back to carrying it. The tank groans again. Louder. Metal screaming. The sound of imminent failure. Of physics winning. Of time expiring. All boats cast off now. Everyone who's aboard gets clear. Everyone else takes shelter. Find anything solid. Get behind structures. Get distance. Move. Boats separate from the dock. Overloaded vessels riding low in the water. Engines straining. Heading away from blast radius while families left behind scatter. Finding cover that won't matter. Finding distance that won't help. Finding hope in places where hope is mathematical impossibility. Finding out if probability favors them. The James backs away. Engines full. The cutter crowded with families. Children crying. Parents holding each other. People who survived because they reached the boat first. Because random chance put them close enough. Because mathematics favored their position. Because I chose to save them instead of the 200 still waiting. Vance counts heads. Captain, we've got 112 aboard the James. Looks like total evacuation across all boats is approximately 580. That leaves 220 still in the blast zone. 580 saved, 220 dead. The mathematics of insufficient time. Of crisis response that couldn't stretch far enough. Of resistance that mattered but couldn't save everyone. Of choices that cost lives, regardless of intention. The tank fails. Not an explosion. Worse, a rupture. The weakened wall giving way, releasing pressure and burning chemicals, and everything contained suddenly not contained. The cascade that engineers predicted. The catastrophic failure that time and heat and physics guaranteed. Fire erupts. Massive. Immediate. The kind of fireball that consumes everything within range. That turns structures to ash. That kills instantly or slowly depending on distance and luck and mathematics that no longer matter. The blast wave follows. Expanding. Leveling buildings. Shattering windows. The shock wave that destroys what fire doesn't reach, that extends the kill radius beyond predictions, that proves engineers were optimistic about half-mile containment, that kills more than 220. Through binoculars, I watch the residential area disappear. One moment there are buildings and people and families taking shelter. Next moment there's fire and debris and smoke too thick to see through. Next moment, there's nothing except mathematics proving insufficient. Captain, Vance's voice breaks. She's watching her city burn, watching neighborhoods vanish, watching people die because boats couldn't move fast enough and tanks couldn't hold longer and time ran out. Watching and understanding that some of those deaths are operational necessity, strategic choice, the acceptable losses that come from pulling resources from rescue operations to attempt evacuations. The cost of the decision I made. Get a count. How many structures were in that blast zone? How many people didn't make it? Vance works her tablet, overlaying the fireball radius with building data, calculating population based on census records and evacuation numbers, building the casualty estimate from mathematics and fire. Sir, estimate is 370 people were still in lethal range when the tank failed. That's not counting structural collapse extending the kill zone. Real number could be 450, maybe 500. 500 dead. Not 220, not the number we failed to evacuate. More, the blast bigger than predicted, the engineers wrong, the mathematics worse than calculated, the cost higher than estimated. And somewhere across the channel, 200 people wait for rescue that's not coming. Wait for boats that are here loading survivors from the tank explosion. Wait while time expires and injuries worsen and some die waiting because I pulled resources for an evacuation that didn't save everyone anyway. Wait while my choice kills them. What about the 200 in active rescue? Vance checks radio traffic, monitors emergency channels, builds the picture from scattered reports. Fire department resumed rescue operations once their boats cleared the blast zone. They're picking up operations, but response times increased. We're getting reports of casualties among those waiting. Exact numbers unknown, but some didn't make it.
Some didn't make it. The phrase that means my choice cost lives. That means pulling boats created casualties that wouldn't have existed. That means 580 saved came at the cost of 500 dead from the blast, plus unknown dead from delayed rescue. That means the mathematics didn't balance, that resistance wasn't sufficient, that fighting failed to prevent catastrophe, that duty cost more than it saved. The smoke over Houston thickens. 3,000 casualties from the Donatech, 500 from the tank explosion, unknown number from delayed rescue operations. The count climbing, the mathematics accumulating, the weight increasing, the cost of modern warfare compounding. Through the smoke, families huddle aboard the James. 580 people who survived because boats reached them, because random chance favored their location, because mathematics worked out for them. 580 people alive because I chose them over the 200 waiting and the 220 we couldn't evacuate, and the additional casualties from blast radius miscalculation. 580 survivors who caused 700 dead from the blast. The mathematics that never balance, personally, even when they balance strategically. Vance watches the burning channel. Her city destroyed, her waterway devastated. 18 years working these waters, learning every current and hazard, and now learning what modern warfare costs. Learning what command means, what choices demand, what carrying weight feels like. Captain Harris, did we make the right call? Did we make the right call? The question every commander asks. The doubt that follows every decision that costs lives. The second guessing that's inevitable and pointless and permanent. The weight that never lightens, regardless of mathematics. We saved 580 people who would have died otherwise. That's all we could do. Whether it was right doesn't matter. It's what we did. We carry what follows. But 700 died. 700 people who might have survived if we'd made different choices. Or 800 died, plus the 200. Or everyone died. Or nobody died. We can't know alternative outcomes. We can only know what happened. We saved 580. 700 died. Both are true. Both matter. We carry both. Vance nods. I'm just accepting. The recognition that command means living with choices that cost lives. That duty means carrying weight that never disappears. That resistance matters even when it fails to prevent catastrophe. That fighting changes outcomes even when it can't save everyone. The James heads toward the safe zone, toward medical facilities, toward processing survivors and counting casualties and building reports that will call this crisis response. That will note 580 rescued against 500 killed. That will calculate ratios and assess performance and determine whether choices were justified. Reports that won't attend funerals, that won't visit families, that won't carry names of people who died waiting or died in blast zones or died because mathematics didn't work out. Reports that matter strategically but fail personally. My phone stays silent. Emma not calling. Either trusting I'm alive or afraid to learn otherwise. Either processing her father's in Houston's disaster zone or deciding whether carrying is survivable. Either accepting that resistance costs everything or questioning whether fighting matters. I don't know which. Can't know from silence. Can only know she survived Seattle and she evacuated Houston and she's safe in Dallas while I'm here counting casualties I couldn't prevent. Safe because I keep fighting or safe despite it. Or safe unrelated to anything I do. The mathematics of family that never balance either.
December 11th, 2044, 21:34 hours. Houston Ship Channel Emergency Operations Center. They converted a warehouse into command. Concrete structure inland from the blast zones. Thanks of monitors showing the channel burning. Radio traffic coordinating response across a disaster too large for coordination. The organized chaos of catastrophe management when systems exceed capacity. The place where mathematics become reports. I've been here 2 hours. Debriefing, casualty assessment, operational review. Admiral Chen on video link asking questions that don't have good answers. Asking whether pulling boats from active rescue was justified, whether the 580 saved balanced the 700 dead, whether my choices were correct. Numbers keep updating. 3,200 from the dawn attack revised to 3,400. 500 from the tank explosion confirmed at 473. Delayed rescue, casualties assessed at 62. Confirmed dead, 18 critical. Total, 3,955. 4,000 people. Nearly 4,000 families learning what Chicago and Seattle taught, what Houston reinforces, that modern warfare doesn't discriminate, that cruise missiles hit refineries, hit neighborhoods, hit everyone within range, that acceptable losses aren't acceptable when you're counting bodies, that strategic victory costs more than mathematics suggest. Commander Laura Vance sits across the table, still in salt-stained uniform, hair pulled back, eyes red from smoke or exhaustion. Houston native, watching her city burn. They're asking if we'd make the same call again, if we'd pull rescue boats for the evacuation, knowing the tank would fail early, knowing the blast would kill more than predicted.
Would I make the same call again? The question that haunts every decision that costs lives. The second guessing that's inevitable. The doubt that follows when outcomes prove worse than calculated. The weight that compounds when mathematics fail. We'd make the same call. 800 people in confirmed blast radius versus 200 in delayed rescue. The math-supported evacuation, even if outcomes didn't. But we killed 62 people by delaying their rescue. 62 sailors and refinery workers who died waiting because boats were here instead of there. That's not mathematics, that's choice. That's us deciding they mattered less. She's right. 62 people died because I prioritized 800 over 200. Because I calculated that preventing future casualties justified accepting present ones. Because strategic thinking demanded sacrifice. Because command means choosing who dies. Those 62 were going to die anyway if the Tyke killed 800 plus them. We don't operate in perfect information. We operate in cascading crisis where every choice costs something and inaction costs more. I made the best call available. 62 dead is terrible. 800 dead is catastrophic. Mathematics support the choice even if grief doesn't. Vance looks away, processing, understanding maybe that command means living with decisions that kill people. That duty requires accepting casualties as operational necessity. That resistance matters even when it fails to save everyone. That carrying weight is permanent, regardless of justification. How do you do it? How do you make these choices and keep functioning? How do I keep functioning? By compartmentalizing, by separating professional from personal, by understanding that emotion is valid but can't override mission, by carrying names instead of letting them paralyze me, by accepting that resistance costs everything but surrender costs more. You carry it. You remember names. You visit families when you can. You accept that some decisions guarantee casualties and do them anyway because not deciding kills more. You understand that command means living with weight that never lightens. That doesn't answer the question, that just describes the problem.
She's right again.
Describing isn't answering. Explaining process isn't justifying outcome. Words don't reduce weight or resurrect dead or make mathematics balance when they cost 4,000 lives. Words are just what's left when fighting stops and counting starts. There is no answer. There's just duty, just mission, just the next crisis requiring impossible choices. You function because people need you functional. You carry weight because someone has to. You keep going because
Stopping means surrender, and surrender costs more. That's not slowly. The recognition that command offers no comfort, no resolution, no catharsis that makes carrying bearable. Just acceptance that weight is permanent and duty continues and resistance matters even when insufficient. Just the reality that this is what's left. The monitors show Houston burning, the Houston Channel devastated, refineries still blazing 12 hours after impact, secondary explosions still occurring as chemicals ignite and tanks fail, and the cascading catastrophe continues. The disaster that won't stop, that keeps compounding, that proves attacks on industrial targets create casualties long after missiles stop. My phone vibrates. Emma. Dad, I saw the explosion. They showed it on news. That fireball. God, that fireball. Please tell me you weren't there. Please tell me you're okay. Emma's voice shakes. The daughter watching her father's city burn, watching disastrous compound, learning that Houston's worse than Seattle, that the war escalates, that resistance costs more each engagement, that her father might not survive mathematics that keep getting worse. I was there. I'm okay. We evacuated 580 people before the tank failed. Most survived. Not all, but most. How many didn't? How many didn't? 473 in the blast, 62 from delayed rescue, 18 critical who might not make it, 553 dead or dying because boats couldn't move fast enough and tanks couldn't hold long enough, and time ran out. 553 casualties that tactical reports will call acceptable, while families call them unforgivable. 553! Plus 4,000 from the dawn attack, Houston's casualty count is approaching 5,000. Silence on the line. Emma processing numbers too large for comprehension. 5,000 dead. 5,000 families destroyed. 5,000 names added to the war's accounting. The mathematics that make strategic reports while breaking people. 5,000 people, Dad. That's more than Chicago. More than Seattle. When does it stop? When do the numbers stop getting worse? When does it stop? I don't know. Don't know when Russia decides the cost exceeds benefit. Don't know when America's defenses improve enough to prevent catastrophe. Don't know when mathematics favor defense over offense. Don't know if they ever do. It stops when the war ends. Until then, attacks keep coming, and defenses keep fighting, and casualties keep accumulating. That's modern warfare. That's what we're living through. But you don't have to be in it. You could step back. You could command from somewhere safe. You don't have to be in the disaster zones, making impossible choices. She's right. I could request reassignment. Could take staff position. Could command from safety, while others face catastrophe. Could avoid the weight that comes from choosing casualties. Could stop carrying names. But someone has to make the choices. Someone has to stand in disasters and decide who lives and who dies, and carry what follows. Someone has to understand that command means sacrifice, and accept it anyway. Someone has to resist, even when resistance costs everything. I have to be here. This is where I'm needed. This is what I do, Em. I can't explain it better than that. Someone has to make these choices, and I'm someone who can carry what follows. That matters.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't matter if you die doing it. It doesn't matter if the weight breaks you. Dad, you've lost Danny. You've lost ships and crews. You've watched cities burn. How much more before you can't carry it anymore?
How much more? I don't know. Don't know my breaking point. Don't know when weight becomes unbearable. Don't know when borrowed time expires and mathematics catch up and the ocean or the enemy or the grief finally claims me.
don't know if I'm already broken and just haven't realized it yet. I don't know, Em. I just know I'm not there yet. I'm still functioning, still making choices, still carrying it. When I can't anymore, I'll stop. Until then, I keep going. That's not good enough. It's all I have. More silence. Emma processing that her father has no better answer. That duty offers no comfort. That resistance costs everything, and he accepts it anyway because the alternative is worse. That loving someone who carries this much weight might not be survivable. I love you, Dad, but I don't know if I can keep watching you do this. Keep watching you make choices that cost thousands. Keep waiting to find out if you survive the next attack. I don't know if that's survivable. Emma's breaking. The daughter who lost Danny, who survived Seattle, who vacuumed Houston and watched it burn, who's learning that having a father in modern warfare means living with uncertainty and grief, and mathematics that might take him any time, who's deciding whether that's bearable. I understand. I can't make this easier. Can't promise I'll survive. Can't guarantee the choices won't keep costing thousands. I can only keep fighting and hope it matters and carry what follows. If that's not survivable for you, I understand. Don't do that. Don't make it my choice. Don't put this on me. I'm just accepting that you have to decide what's bearable. Same as I have to decide what duty requires. Neither choice is wrong. Both cost something. We carry what we choose. Emma's crying now. Quiet sobs over the phone. The daughter breaking under weight she didn't choose. Under grief that compounds. Under the realization that her father might not come home and she can't change that, and living with it might not be possible. I have to go. I love you, Em. The call ends. No response. Just silence. Am I gone? And I'm here in Houston counting casualties I couldn't prevent, while my daughter decides whether loving me is survivable. While mathematics keep taking everything. Vance watched the conversation. Didn't hear it, but understood enough. Understood that command costs family. That duty breaks relationships. That resistance takes everything, including the people you're defending. That carrying weight means sometimes carrying it alone. Your daughter, she's processing, deciding whether this is survivable, whether having a father who makes choices that kill thousands is bearable. What will you do if she decides it isn't?
What will I do? Keep fighting. Keep making impossible choices. Keep carrying weight, even if I carry it alone. Because duty doesn't stop when family breaks. Because mission continues when relationships fail. Because resistance matters even when it costs everyone you love. Because someone has to stand between missiles and cities, even when standing costs everything. I'll keep going, same as always. Duty doesn't stop because it's hard. Mission doesn't pause because it hurts. I'll carry her choice same as I carry everything else. Vance nods. Understanding, maybe, or just accepting. The recognition that command takes everything, that duty costs more than lives, that resistance requires sacrificing even the people you're trying to protect, that this is what's left when fighting never ends. The monitors keep updating. Casualty counts climbing. 4,955 becomes 4,002. 4,002 becomes 4,014. The numbers that will finalize somewhere around 4,500 when all bodies are counted and all critical patients stabilize or don't. 4,500 names. 4,500 families. 4,500 reasons Houston matters. And 4,500 reasons it wasn't enough. The mathematics that never balance. Admiral Chen appears on video link. Same expression as always. The one that understands cost, that carries weight, that knows victory and loss are inseparable in modern warfare. Harris, final assessment. Admiral,
Houston sustained coordinated submarine-launched cruise missile attack at dawn. 73 inbound, shore defenses intercepted 41. 32 impacts across refinery and port infrastructure. Initial casualties 3,400. Secondary explosion at Baytown Refinery Complex added 473. Delayed rescue operations resulted in 62 confirmed dead. Total casualties assessed at 4,500 when all counts finalize. Strategic impact. Strategic impact. The question that measures attacks in economic terms instead of human ones, that calculates refinery capacity and port functionality and supply chain disruption, that translates grief into metrics, that makes acceptable losses quantifiable. Refinery capacity reduced by approximately 40%. Port functionality degraded by 35%. Economic impact estimated at $200 billion. Recovery timeline estimated at 18 to 24 months. Sir, this is the worst attack of the war. Worse than Chicago, worse than Seattle. Houston's strategic value to the energy sector makes this catastrophic. Chen is quiet, processing, calculating, understanding that Houston proved Russia's doctrine works, that attacking industrial targets creates cascading failures, that economic warfare succeeds when conventional warfare fails, that strategic victory belongs to whoever accepts higher casualties. And the evacuation, the tank explosion. We saved 580 civilians from confirmed blast zone. 473 died when the tank failed earlier than predicted.
62 died from delayed rescue operations when we pulled boats for evacuation. Sir, the mathematics supported the choice even if outcomes didn't. You made the call you had to make. 580 saved versus 800 potential. The numbers justified your decision. That some died anyway doesn't change that you prevented worse outcome. The numbers justified your decision. The phrase that means strategic thinking supported tactical choice. That means mathematics validate what grief questions. That means duty required sacrifice, even when sacrifice cost lives. That means I did everything right, and 4,500 people died anyway. Yes, sir. Chen's voice changes again. Personal instead of professional. This is the worst attack of the war. 4,500 casualties. Economic catastrophe. Strategic defeat. You operated in impossible conditions with insufficient resources, and you saved who you could. That matters. The 580 matter. Don't let the 4,500 erase what you prevented. What I prevented. The families that survived because boats moved, because choices created alternatives, because resistance reduced catastrophe even when it couldn't prevent it. The 580 alive because I chose them over certainty, over waiting, over the mathematics that said everyone dies if we don't try. They matter. Have to matter. Otherwise, what's the point of any of this? Otherwise, why resist when resistance costs everything? Otherwise, why fight when fighting fails to save everyone? They matter because resistance matters. Because fighting changes outcomes, because the alternative is worse, because Emma's alive and 580 families are alive, and that has to justify the weight. Has to. Understood, Admiral. Get some rest. Tomorrow we start recovery operations. Houston needs rebuilding. America needs reassurance. War continues. Chen sends. The video link ends. I'm alone with Vance and monitors showing Houston burning and casualty counts climbing, and the evidence that resistance was insufficient, that fighting failed to prevent catastrophe, that duty cost 4,500 lives, but 580 survived.
580 families intact because boats moved and choices mattered and resistance created alternatives. 580 people alive because I stood in the gap even when standing cost everything else. 580 reasons fighting matters. 580 names that balance 4,500, except they don't balance. Never balance. 580 saved doesn't erase 4,500 dead, doesn't resurrect casualties, doesn't heal families, doesn't make grief mathematical. Just proves resistance changes outcomes even when it can't prevent catastrophe. That fighting matters even when it fails to save everyone. The duty costs everything, but surrender costs more.
That's what's left. That's what remains after Houston burns and Seattle sinks and Chicago falls and Danny dies and Emma breaks and 4,500 families grieve. That resistance matters. That fighting changes outcomes. That carrying weight is permanent but necessary. That someone has to stand between missiles and cities even when standing costs everything. That I'm someone who can carry it, even when it breaks me, even when it costs everyone I love, even when mathematics never balance, and grief never lightens, and weight never disappears, even then, because the alternative is worse, because 580 people are alive, because Emma survived Seattle, even if she can't survive watching me do this. Because resistance is all that's left when surrender means collapse. I walk outside. Houston burns on the horizon. Smoke rising into night sky. Fires that will burn for days. Refineries that will take years to rebuild. The city that learned what modern warfare costs. The city that survived because resistance mattered. 4,500 dead. 580 saved. 62 killed by my choice. 18 critical. Emma breaking. The weight that accumulates. The cost of fighting. But fighting changes outcomes. Resistance reduces catastrophe. Duty matters even when it costs everything. That has to be enough. Because it's all there is. December 12th, 2044. 0623 hours. Temporary housing facility, northwest Houston. Sleep didn't come. Just hours staring at ceiling tiles in a FEMA trailer, counting names, reciting the list that grows every engagement. Danny, Martinez, O'Brien, Torres, Rodriguez, Wright, Hayes, Chen, Martinez from Chancellorsville, Johnson, Patterson, Williams. 8 from Lake Erie whose names I learned. 62 from delayed rescue. 473 from the blast. 566 names added in one day. The weight that compounds. Coffee tastes like ash. Everything tastes like ash. The air thick with smoke even miles from the channel. Houston breathing its own destruction. 7 million people waking to a city changed. To refineries gone. To port facilities destroyed. To the evidence that modern warfare reached them. To the knowledge that 4,500 families woke to notifications instead of mourning. My phone shows 3 missed calls from Emma. No messages. Just attempts to reach me that I slept through or ignored or couldn't answer because what's left to say? She's deciding whether loving me is survivable. I'm deciding whether fighting matters enough to cost everyone I love.
We're both calculating mathematics that don't balance. Commander Laura Vance finds me outside the trailer. Same uniform as yesterday, same exhaustion in her eyes. Houston native who spent 18 years learning these waters and one day watching them burn. Captain Harris,
Admiral Chen is requesting your presence at damage assessment briefing. 0800 hours. They're evaluating whether Houston remains strategically viable or whether we abandon port operations entirely. Abandon port operations. A phrase that means surrender. That means Russia achieves strategic objective. That means attacks succeeded in ways casualties alone don't measure. That means 4,500 dead, plus economic collapse, plus America's energy sector crippled. That means resistance wasn't sufficient. What's the current assessment? 40% refinery capacity destroyed, 35% port functionality degraded and declining, economic impact assessed at $200 billion minimum. Strategic impact exceeds all previous engagements. What do we know? 72 hours. That's the engineering assessment timeline for determining structural stability across remaining facilities. 3 days. 3 days. 72 hours to discover if resistance mattered, if fighting changed outcomes, if the strategic victory Admiral Chen mentioned is real or just words covering defeat. 3 days to learn if 4,500 casualties bought anything except grief. We drive to the briefing through a city transformed. Smoke everywhere. Traffic lights dark. National Guard checkpoints. Evacuation routes still congested with people leaving. The visible evidence of catastrophe, of infrastructure disrupted, of normal life suspended while crisis response struggles to manage disaster too large for management. The aftermath that lasts longer than the attack. The briefing room is crowded. Military commanders, FEMA officials, Houston Sigil leadership, energy sector executives. The assembled authority trying to determine if Houston remains viable or becomes another casualty, another city that learned modern warfare costs more than populations can bear. Admiral Chen peers on video link. Same expression, same understanding. The admiral who's watched Chicago and Seattle and now Houston burn, who's made the same impossible choices, who carries weight that matches mine. Situation assessment. Houston sustained worst attack of the war. 4,500 casualties confirmed. 40% refinery capacity destroyed, 35% port functionality degraded and declining. Economic impact assessed at $200 billion minimum. Strategic impact exceeds all previous engagements. The room stays quiet, everyone processing, understanding that Houston represents escalation, that Russia evolved tactics, that submarine-launched attacks with minimal warning work, that surprise defeats defense regardless of capability, that the war is being lost incrementally through attacks that succeed strategically even when they fail tactically. Question is whether Houston remains viable, whether recovery is possible, or whether we redirect resources to other facilities and accept that Houston's contribution to American energy sector is finished. Finished. The word that means defeat, that means strategic surrender, that means Russia achieved objective completely. That means 4,500 died, and America abandons what they died defending. That means resistance failed, and surrender is pragmatic. A voice from the room. Captain Richardson, Navy, Pacific Fleet. Officer I don't know, but who carries the same weight, the same exhaustion. Admiral, abandoning Houston means Russia's doctrine works. Means submarine-launched surprise attacks can eliminate strategic infrastructure. Means to replicate this, Portland, San Francisco, every coastal city with industrial value becomes target. We can't defend everywhere. If Houston proves the concept works, we lose the war incrementally through attacks we can't prevent. Richardson's right. Houston isn't just Houston. It's proof of concept. Demonstration that Russia can strike critical infrastructure with minimal warning.
that American defenses can't prevent it, that strategic objectives are achievable through volume and surprise and accepting casualties as operational cost, that offense wins when you're willing to pay the price. Jen nods. Correct assessment, which creates impossible choice. We commit resources to Houston recovery, accepting years of reconstruction and vulnerability to follow-on attacks. Or we abandon Houston, accepting strategic defeat while preserving resources for defense elsewhere. Both options cost something. Both guarantee outcomes we don't want. Both options cost something. The summary of modern warfare. The reality that no choice prevents catastrophe. That command means selecting less terrible options from a menu of terrible. The duty requires accepting costs that feel unacceptable. The carrying weight means carrying it regardless of choice. Captain Harris, Jen's attention shifts to me. You operated in Houston during the attack and immediate aftermath. You made tactical choices that saved 580 civilians while accepting 62 delayed rescue casualties. You understand the mathematics of insufficient resources better than anyone here. Assessment. Assessment. Chen wants me to judge whether Houston is viable, whether resistance matters enough to continue, whether the city I couldn't save is worth saving, whether 4,500 casualties bought anything. Everyone watches, waiting for the captain who understands cost, who made impossible choices, who carries weight that makes this assessment credible in ways others can't be, waiting for me to determine Houston's fate.
Houston survives, not because recovery is easy or cheap or quick, but because abandoning it proves Russia's doctrine works, proves that striking industrial targets succeeds strategically, regardless of tactical defense, proves that America can't protect critical infrastructure. That's unacceptable. We rebuild Houston because the alternative is admitting defeat and inviting replication. Silence after, then murmurs, agreement and disagreement mixing, the divided response to assessment that commits resources while accepting risk, that chooses fighting over surrender, even when fighting costs everything, that accepts duty requires resistance, even when resistance is insufficient. Chen studies me through the screen. The admiral who understands, who carries weight, who knows I'm not arguing strategy, I'm arguing necessity. That resistance matters not because it prevents catastrophe, but because surrender invites worse. Explain the mathematics, Harris. Make it clear. The mathematics. The calculation that justifies resistance, that makes fighting necessary despite cost, that proves duty matters even when outcomes are insufficient. The numbers that define this war. 4,500 casualties is catastrophic, but 41 intercepted missiles saved approximately 4,000 additional lives. 56% interception rate prevented total destruction. Houston stands damaged but functional. 60% refinery capacity remains operational. 65% port functionality intact. Those percentages represent resistance mattering, fighting changing outcomes, defense preventing complete strategic defeat. I pause. Let the numbers settle. Let everyone process that resistance created those percentages, that fighting generated those survivals, that duty produced those functions, that mathematics support continued resistance even when they include 4,500 dead. We abandon Houston. Russia learns that overwhelming defense through surprise works, that submarine-launched attacks succeed strategically, that 41 intercepts don't matter when 32 impacts eliminate strategic value,
They replicate Houston everywhere. Every coastal city becomes target. Every industrial facility becomes vulnerable. We lose the war through accumulated strategic defeats that our defenses can't prevent. The room shifts. Maybe. Recognition that Houston isn't just Houston, it's precedent, pattern, proof of concept that determines whether Russia's doctrine succeeds or fails, whether America's defenses matter or whether they are overcome through adaptation and escalation, whether resistance is sufficient or whether warfare has evolved past defense. We rebuild Houston to prove defense matters, to demonstrate that striking American infrastructure costs more than benefits, to show that even successful attacks don't achieve strategic objectives, that resistance continues regardless of cost, that America absorbs catastrophe and continues functioning. Ched nods slowly. The recognition that I'm not making military argument, I'm making a psychological one. That Houston's recovery matters less than what abandonment signals. That strategic value isn't just economic, it's a message about American resolve. It's demonstration that resistance continues even when it costs everything.
Recommendation accepted. Houston remains strategically viable. Recovery operations commence immediately. FEMA coordinates civilian recovery. Corps of Engineers handles infrastructure repair. Navy maintains defensive posture against follow-on attacks. Captain Harris remains as Task Force Commander for operational continuity. Remains as Task Force Commander. The assignment that means I stay in Houston. That means I oversee recovery. That means I watch the city rebuild from catastrophe I couldn't prevent. That means I carry 4,500 casualties while managing reconstruction. That means the weight compounds while I stay in the disaster zone. The briefing continues. Resource allocation, timeline assessments, recovery projections. The planning that translates catastrophe into operational tasks, that makes rebuilding systematic, that creates structure from chaos, that makes resistance practical instead of just necessary. I stop listening. Already know what recovery looks like. Seen it after Chicago, after Seattle. The pattern that emerges after attacks. The progression from emergency response to stabilization to reconstruction. The trajectory that takes months becoming years, becoming permanent change. The aftermath that lasts forever. My phone vibrates. Emma finally messaging instead of calling. I'd been thinking about what I said, about not being able to watch you do this. I don't know if that's fair. You're doing what you have to do, what you think matters. I can't make you choose between duty and family because that's not a real choice. Duty would win, always wins. So I have to choose whether I can live with that. 3 dots appear, disappear, appear again. I don't know yet. I need time. I need to process Danny and Seattle and Houston and everything. I need to figure out if loving someone who makes choices that kill thousands is survivable. That's not fair to you, but it's honest. I need space to decide. Space to decide. Emma stepping back. Processing whether having a father in modern warfare is bearable. Whether the weight of watching me make impossible choices is survivable. Whether loving someone who carries 4,500 casualties is possible. Whether our relationship survives duty. I don't respond. Don't know what to say. Don't have words that make this easier. Can't promise I'll choose differently. Can't guarantee duty won't keep costing thousands. Can't assure her the mathematics will balance. Can only accept that Emma needs space and give it to her even though it costs everything. Can only carry this weight, too. The briefing ends. Assignments distributed. Recovery operations beginning. Houston transitioning from emergency response to long-term reconstruction. The shift that means crisis becomes normal. That means catastrophe becomes baseline. That means 4,500 casualties become statistics in recovery plans. That means grief becomes operational context. Commander Vance finds me outside, watching smoke rise over the channel, watching Houston breathe its own destruction while deciding whether to survive or surrender. Captain, they're asking about memorial services, when to hold them, how to honor 4,500 casualties while managing ongoing crisis. They want your input. Memorial services, the rituals that acknowledge loss, that create space for grief, that recognize casualties as people instead of numbers. The ceremonies that matter to families, even when they're insufficient for healing. Recognition that resistance costs lives, that deserve mourning. Hold them as soon as practical. Don't wait for stability. Don't delay for optimal timing. People need to grieve now. Need to acknowledge loss now. Need to understand their loved ones mattered, even though mathematics required their deaths. Vance nods, understanding maybe that memorial services aren't just ceremony. They're necessity, and families need recognition, that casualties deserve acknowledgement, that grief can't wait for convenient timing, that the dead matter, even when duty required their sacrifice. What about the 62, the ones who died from delayed rescue when we pulled boats for evacuation? Do we acknowledge that separately? Do families need to know their loved ones died because of operational choice? Do families need to know? The question that has no good answer. Truth means families learn their loved ones died because I chose others over them. The tactical necessity cost specific lives. That mathematics killed people who had names and families and value beyond calculation. The duty meant sacrificing them. They deserve truth. Families deserve knowing why. Understanding that their loved ones died because tactical situation required impossible choice. That those 62 were sacrificed to save 580. That mathematics supported the decision, even if grief questions it. That's going to create anger. Families will want accountability, will demand explanation for why their loved ones mattered less than others, will question whether the choice was correct. She's right. Truth creates accountability, invites questioning, demands explanation for choices that killed people, the complications that come from honesty, from acknowledging that command means deciding who dies, that duty requires making people matter less than others, that resistance costs specific lives in calculable ways. Let them be angry. Let them question. Let them demand explanation. They deserve that. Their loved ones deserve that. We don't get to hide behind operational necessity. We made choices that killed people. We carry that. We answer for that. Vance looks at me, studying, trying to understand how someone carries this and functions. How duty continues when weight compounds. How resistance matters when it costs everything, including the people you're defending and the people you love, and the version of yourself that existed before mathematics became language of grief. How long can you do this? How many more cities before you break? How many more? I don't know. Don't know my limit. Don't know when weight becomes unbearable. Don't know when Emma's space becomes permanent distance. When duty costs more than it's worth. When resistance fails to matter enough to justify continuing. Don't know if I'm already broken and just haven't stopped yet. As long as they need me. As long as cities need defending and impossible choices need making. As long as resistance matters more than personal cost. That's all there is. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. We stand in smoke, watching Houston decide whether to survive. Watching a city process catastrophe. Watching 7 million people learn what 4,500 casualties costs. What 40% refinery capacity means. What strategic defeat disguised as partial victory feels like. Watching and understanding that resistance mattered even though it wasn't sufficient. That fighting changed outcomes even though it couldn't prevent catastrophe. That duty required sacrifice that feels unjustifiable even when mathematics support it. That this is modern warfare. This is what's left. This is the cost of resistance when surrender means worse. 4,500 dead, 580 saved, 62 sacrificed. Emma needing space. Danny gone. 25 sailors drowned across 3 engagements. Houston burning. The weight that accumulates. The cost that compounds. But Houston survives, rebuilds, demonstrates that striking American infrastructure doesn't achieve strategic objective, proves that resistance continues regardless of cost, shows that duty matters even when outcomes are insufficient, shows that someone will stand between missiles and cities even when standing costs everything, even when it breaks them. Even when everyone they love needs space to decide if loving them is survivable. Even when mathematics never balance and grief never lightens and weight never disappears. Even then. Because the alternative is worse. Because 580 people are alive. Because Houston stands, even while burning. Because resistance is all that's left when surrender means collapse. That has to be enough, because it's all there is. Smoke rises, the city breathes, recovery begins, the war continues, and I carry it, all of it, always.